slide.
So I'm just going to record this piece of Allie's presentation, and I'm going to record a piece of Allison's, if she doesn't mind, just so that we have it.
Okay, so we're on the right screen now, right? You don't see all the other stuff that was on before, or? Okay, awesome. So just the slides. Okay, so again, like Lydia mentioned, this is the Connect Regional Recycling Report, and my name is Allie Walker. I've been working with Connect. I guess it's been a year now since the capstone started. I started with the capstone through GISPIA and got to continue this project through to this paper. So today I'm just going to talk about why recycling, why we're here and having this conversation, and why we're writing a report on it, and then the varying levels of reviews that I've done on the programs that exist in our region, and my findings from there. And I'll walk through the recommendations that the report is that the report's based off of, and then we'll have time for discussion. So the reason we're here is, like Lydia said, in 2019, there was a visiting session, and it was declared that recycling was one of the most important issues on people's minds. From that point, we've done more research into this. Connect has since started their work on climate action plans, climate action reports. So basically, we have this sector that's very involved in economic and environmental issues, and recycling is one of those. So at the beginning of this, well, actually fairly recently, we held a focus group, and this word cloud is just some of the issues or desires that people had for their recycling programs. So that's another reason why we're here, to address the issues and concerns of people like you. I think maybe some of you even participated. So, and additionally, we're here because of our decreased rates of recycling. So this is tonnage information from the county. The capstone report had up to 2018, but now we have 2019 available. And admittedly, weight of products has gone down. I know for a fact that plastics manufacturers are, making their making their bottles or jugs lighter to save money, but this still shows a trend of decreasing recycling, and this is just the Connect region. So from 2013 to 2019, a pretty big decrease in how much we are recycling at the curb. So in order to kind of discover why this is, I took a deep dive into the programs that municipalities in the greater Pittsburgh region have. So I looked at, firstly, everybody's website, and what I found was that nearly every municipality had a different set of terminology surrounding the materials and how they explained them, which really plays into the fragmentalization of our programs. If someone goes to live in one municipality and they go to work in another municipality, it's going to be totally different language coming at them, and it's no wonder people are confused. So different terminology, municipalities with the same haulers are even advertising that there's different materials that are accepted. The haulers are changing what's accepted on different contracts, etc. So basically a lot of fragmentalization. Then going over the ordinances of each of the municipalities, what I found was pretty shocking, actually. So only 29 of 45 municipalities that were looked at had a recycling ordinance. The average rate of the average year of adoption for those is 1995. And only 11 of those have amendments, but on average, they were amended 15 years after, which still puts us 10 years behind where we are now. And a lot has changed in recycling practices since that time. So basically what we're finding is these ordinances don't live up to what expectations we would have for a program today. 75% of the municipalities mention a sustained public education program, which is required by Act 101, but only less than half of the ordinances elaborate on that at all. And then less than 25% call for any sort of recycling tonnage report on annual or quarterly basis. 2 still allow bags for recycling collection, which we have been told is not best practice. And penalties are pretty steep actually and range from $25 to $1,000 fine or even jail time. So all in all, what we found was these need to be updated. And then the last piece, which is kind of the driving piece of this project, this continued project from the capstone, was to look at contracts. And these contracts, we spent time gathering them, and we really thought that the bulk of the information we wanted would be able to be extrapolated from the contracts. And what we found was we're really just missing this information. A major piece of information we wanted to know was where our trash is going. And 6 contracts have any sort of notation as to which landfill municipal waste is going. Only 2 list which MRF recyclables go to. 6 outline any sort of data collection specifications, and 5 require the hauler to aid in public education of any kind. So what we found is in contracts, there's certain pieces that we could get the information for if we asked the haulers, especially on our bid specifications. But by not asking these questions, we're not getting these answers, and that's why we're missing a lot of information. So what we can do to fix some of our programs and some of the issues we're seeing with our programs is to first form some sort of search committee to try and look towards creating a more regionalized program. This was an interest at the focus groups, and this has been an interest by many municipalities from the beginning of this project. So that search committee will help try to build that central program. They'll implement best practices while doing that. And they will also help guide through the next following recommendations here, which are to speak the same language, which means internally making sure all of your documentation, like your contracts, your ordinances, and your websites are all referring to waste in the same way, but then also externally. So making sure that we are also translating from municipality to municipality, using the same language. In addition to this external piece, we also want to, the best we can, try and make a uniform list of recyclables and what's basically what's allowed at the curb. Currently, again, it's so fragmented, and that's what's causing confusion amongst recyclers. Secondly, we do want to educate the public, and we want to make sure we do this through not just a marketing campaign to let people know what's recyclable and what's available, but an overall kind of brand overhaul, making sure we have one set branding that's recognizable and that we can use into the future. And making sure we list things such as what is recyclable, but also trying to educate the public on why it's important, and even a little bit of how the market works so they can rationalize kind of what's going on, because that makes you a better recycler. And we want to make sure with this education plan that we break barriers, especially in the focus group. Different barriers were concerned, people had concern about different barriers. People were worried about rural accessibility, issues with finances, and also certain communities which have high levels of illiteracy. So considering all these things while creating the public education plan. Lastly, or second to last, I guess, we need to collect data. We know what we want to know at this point, and what we're finding is we just don't have this information. So we need to build that into our contracts and our ordinances, and coming up with a certain set of metrics that need measured. And this should be all entered into a unified database so that this can be used to continue improvements of a program. Lastly, this kind of goes back to the beginning, maintaining a functioning waste authority or central entity. having this entity will help upkeep the recommendations just made, and they'll help continue improvement of these programs as well. So now we can open up questions if needed. We do also have a survey that we've been passing around. How many municipalities are on right now, Tess? Is that worth sending out?
I don't think it would hurt. Hold on.
So this piece or this poll is to encourage any sort of information gathering. I understand, and what I've found is that not a lot of people know this information. So if you don't know the information now and you could look into that, that would be great. But if you know it's non-existent, if you want to just denote that as well, just so we know that it's been taken and we're not just missing information.
So Allison is the Senior Director for Community Conservation and Resiliency for the Allegheny Land Trust.
There we go. Helps if I unmute myself. So I'm going to give is sort of something, a little food for thought before you guys start talking about a regional climate plan. A little back briefing on carbon markets, and then why is ALTU giving me this brief? So I'm going to run through the slides and we'll do questions afterwards, just like Allie's. So the first thing first, there's been a lot of language thrown around, and so I wanted to go through a couple of definitions really quickly. First one being, what is a carbon credit? This was created, so it's made up like a gallon and a mile and everything else, to create a universally applicable standard, 1 metric ton of CO2 equivalent. So if you look on the right side, obviously not everything is the same. So these are the amounts of things that add up to the same thing. It's really hard to process sometimes. So one of the ways that I found is really helpful is like, okay, one typical domestic flight is 1.4 metric tons. It kind of gives you a way to gauge things. And what Allegheny Land Trust is starting to get involved is, what is a forest carbon credit? So this is a sequestration model that looks at same equivalent, 1 metric ton of CO2 as sequestered by trees and soil and existing forests with the way that we look at them. There's actually 3 types of these. One is avoided conversion. You don't cut them down, they stay happy, they sequester more carbon. Planting or restoration, which is becoming popular, and have some examples. And then improved forest management, which is you take an existing forest, but you make it healthier so it can sequester more carbon. And so moving into, okay, well, what do we do with the carbon credits? They are sold on carbon emissions markets, and there's 2 kinds. So the compulsory or compliance markets, and for a term you've probably heard, regional greenhouse gas initiative is one of those that may be coming to Pennsylvania if they finish going through the paperwork, which is actually focuses on emissions from power plants. And then the voluntary carbon markets, which is what Allegheny Land Trust has gotten involved in, focuses on all kinds of emissions, but companies buy them because they are trying to meet a climate goal. So these are not compulsory markets, these are voluntary markets. People are doing them because they're good. And then, like I said, this is really high level and fast for time, but why is a regional carbon market important? And this is one of the reasons why we have a lot of the same faces of people that I talk to on the regular. You're going to get kind of annoyed with me because I'm making a similar presentation to pretty much everyone we know, because the emitters and the solutions are closer together, so you can actually see the results of these type of projects. And one of the reasons I wanted to present to Connect specifically is because it can place cities on both sides of the transaction. So if you have emissions that are unavoidable, but you're trying to meet a regional climate goal, you can actually have emissions and also have offset projects all within the same geography. One example is in the city of Austin. They've pledged to be carbon neutral, So they've partnered up with a tree planting organization to put trees into their riparian areas, but they're also buying the credits off of these projects. So it's a circular arrangement, not appropriate for everyone. But it meets their sustainability goals and it also benefits the residents. So who's participating? There's a lot of big names. I'm not going to list them off. Buying credits, most credits are being bought by corporations. And like I just said, the local government example of Austin. But selling credits are a bunch of different types of organizations. Brokerages, which can also help develop credit projects so you don't have to go it alone. Local governments are actually selling these to fund green space protection and implementation. Other environmental organizations, obviously Arbor Days, starting to work on forest carbon. And then Land Trust and Nature Conservancy are also operating in these markets in Pennsylvania. So why isn't this important to municipalities? We're starting to look at it as a way to be able to fund green spaces infrastructure in municipalities in a way that isn't dependent on taxing and tax bases. So you can implement carbon credit sales as part of a multi-aspect solution. And I'm including the slides for notes after the presentation so everyone can explore the links on their own time. But why can I not shut up about City Forest? So City Forest is actually a carbon plus credit. So you get that metric ton of CO2 and they use a version of iTree to quantify rainfall interception, air quality improvement, and energy savings. So if you've ever run an iTree landscape or anything and you get those results on the bottom, this is a version of that. The person that buys your credit gets to say that they're also doing these good things. So regular forest carbon credits are just carbon. Carbon plus is great because of all these other things. All of those things are things our region is facing. So this is where the synergy starts to come in. For us also, City Forest focuses on smaller project areas, but higher market value. And I'll go into that as I review our project a little bit. So they're issued and monitored by CFC. So there's other carbon certification organizations. This is just one of them. This is the first one to do this type of credit that would be appropriate for the smaller project areas in cities. And they are third-party verified, and the website is below. So again, why do we think this is cool and important? And I wanted to be able to present it to you before you start talking about a regional climate action plan. So there are different ways that municipalities are actually using these. So urban forest preservation, King County, so it's a big, it's a county landscape level. But they're actually using it to fund urban forest expansion within like the city of Seattle. So they're expanding their parks with some of the proceeds from this. One of the big ones that is up is riparian planting. So restoration of riparian areas for flood management, water quality improvement, and resilience during flooding events. And there's a couple of examples on the right. And you guys are some of the first ones to find out about this. They just launched this yesterday when they refreshed their website. But they're also supporting an impact investing platform. So still using those City Plus carbon credits, but you can actually put a project together and then request that they help you locate an investor. And so Phoenix, Arizona is doing this for urban heat island mitigation in low to moderate income neighborhoods to help increase the shade canopy. And the Chicago project is really interesting and relevant to our region. They're taking an old industrial lot. It's open space, right? It's vacant, it's scrubby, it's not great. And they're actually looking for an investor to plant trees to reclaim this as green space for a neighborhood that doesn't have any. And so they're using this program to fund it instead of drawing on municipal funds. So our local example, because I felt like it was important to not just conceptually talk about this, but show how this is working out for us. So ALT just completed a purchase of this property in June of this year. And we went through the protocol. So ALT prepared all of the documents internally. Myself and Emily Erskevitz are able to do that. So of a 155-acre property, we've actually, the blue area is about 126 of that. And when we looked at how healthy the forest is, how much of the forest can do, tree canopy, and some other things, we ended up with about 13,500 credits, which would be available for the voluntary market sale. So we said, whoa, you know, we don't know how those contracts work or anything else. So we've partnered up with Blue Source to help us market, find a vendor, make sure we know how those contracts work. And so they will be receiving a portion of the proceeds from the sale. But one of the things that's really interesting about these with the smaller project area higher impact is they go for a higher price. Traditional forest carbon, where you can only quantify the carbon, is $7 to $15 a credit. So far, they're looking at these carbon plus credits. The aim, even in current market, even in COVID and some other things, there's still a realistic aim to assume that we would be able to go under contract at $30 a credit. So I didn't want to focus too much on the money, but you can do that math really quick and see how this would be an appropriate funding mechanism. So there are admin fees, you have to recover your staff time and internally, but nonetheless, this particular project will be profitable for Allegheny Land Trust, more so than some of our other efforts. And talking about that plus portion, so I wanted to show you guys this because this is really important regionally. So if you look at the estimated rain interception for the health of our forests today, over the course of the 40-year protocol, we're sequestering over 16 million gallons of water. Buena Vista Heights specifically is above a very narrow road and valley that goes down to a section. Buena Vista is actually a small town area on the Youghiogheny River. But they've actually had to close the road multiple times for landslides. And Buena Vista collects all the water and it overtops some of their bridges. So this water sequestration is actually really important in making sure that that development didn't occur on the top of a plateau and then send all the water downstream. So I'll leave this up for a minute, but that, like I said, very quick and high level, wanted to catch everyone up. But that's it for our presentation. And I will open it up for questions.
Thank you. So if you don't already know who I am, my name's Eric. I'm a grad student at DISPIA. I'm in energy and environment. I am the climate action plan coordinator at Connect, and I've been doing climate action planning through the PADEP and through Connect since all the way last August, so over a year now. So I just put a link in the chat to the program that the PADEP is running. And Connect is participating this year. We just got in at the end of this August. And it just started a couple weeks ago. And so basically that is a program, it's called LCAP. It is local government climate action. So it is aiming to measure GHG emissions. So that all this stuff really ties into what, you know, Allison just presented on. Great presentation, by the way. And that's all at the local government level. So last year, 5 municipalities, so Forest Hills, Munhall, Sharpsburg, Etna, West Homestead, all participated in this program, and they measured their GHG emissions. So their GHG emissions from electricity, natural gas, different sectors of each municipality, but Connect is participating this year, and Millvale, yeah. Connect is participating this year as a whole entire region. So that's all 30 municipalities being represented in a climate action plan. So that means the data that we're collecting is going to be we're trying to get data from each of the 30 plus municipalities to make an entire regional, GHG inventory. So we're able to look at what the scope is on an entire region. So a little update, this is just a quick update. We have already successfully sent out data requests. It took quite a while, but we sent data requests out to utilities for electricity, to natural gas. We just sent them out today to transportation and wastewater. So that's 4 out of the 6 sectors. So that was a big hurdle to get over. We finally did that. And that was for all 30 municipalities. So hopefully we should be getting the data back for that. and then I'll be able to treat that and we'll figure out what it means. There's 2 sectors left though. So there's water, and we're reaching out right now to try to figure out how we can send data requests out. And then there's solid waste. So this is where that survey that Ali had mentioned and that's in the chat comes into play. And I think that we said that we would put that at the legislative session as well. Is that correct, Tess?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so that as many people can answer that as possible, because we need to know to send data requests out to get information on that sector. So solid waste for all 30 municipalities, we at least need to know who the waste hauler is. And so it's difficult to source all that information when we really don't know what's going on there. So please answer the survey. That would be super helpful for both Ali and for myself. Yeah, that's about it. So we're getting over the hurdle of data collection right now, and then I'll be able to see what Connect's entire GHG emissions inventory looks like. So it's going well.